Rain lashed the streets of Chicago as David Marshall, a 62-year-old restaurateur, approached his flagship establishment, Marshall's Bistro. 40 years ago, he'd started with a single greasy spoon, building it into a chain of 17 high-end restaurants across 3 states. Tonight, he wasn't the polished CEO in a bespoke suit, he was just another soaked patron in a faded coat, his gray hair dripping, blending into the crowd seeking refuge from the storm. Something tugged at him, an unease he couldn't shake. Recent complaints about declining service had prompted this undercover visit, a chance to see his empire through a customer's eyes. What he found inside would jolt him, reminding him why he'd poured his heart into this business long ago. Sometimes, the smallest acts of compassion reveal the deepest truths, and tonight would redefine everything he thought he knew about success. "Where are you reading from tonight?" David pushed through the bistro's glass doors, the warm glow of chandeliers and the murmur of diners greeting him. But the atmosphere felt strained, like a song played slightly off-key. The hostess, engrossed in her phone, barely glanced up. "One," she muttered, her tone flat as she grabbed a menu. David nodded, noting her disinterest as she led him to a cramped table by the bustling kitchen doors, the spot reserved for unremarkable patrons. Settling in, he scanned the dining room. Servers moved with mechanical precision, their smiles thin and forced, the laughter from tables sounding more like obligation than joy. This wasn't the welcoming haven he'd envisioned when he first opened these doors. Then his eyes caught her, a waitress in her early 40s, her chestnut hair tied back in a fraying bun, her name tag reading, Ellen. Unlike the others, who darted past tables with barely a glance, Ellen lingered, listening intently to customers, topping off drinks before they were asked, making each person feel seen. Yet David noticed the sidelong glances from younger servers, their whispered snickers when she offered to help with their tables. Ellen carried herself with quiet strength, but her shoulders sagged under an invisible burden, her smile faltering when she thought no one watched. The evening was hectic. A man in a suit at table 10 barked for faster service. A couple grumbled about their late entree. An elderly patron sent back her salad twice, unimpressed. Through it all, Ellen moved with steady grace, diffusing complaints with a patience that seemed born of deep resolve. David ordered a modest steak, wanting to stay inconspicuous. He watched Ellen manage 7 tables with the finesse of a seasoned pro, remembering that table 5 liked extra lemon in their water, that table 3 was marking a promotion, and that the young man at table 7 was anxious about his first date. But then David saw something that gripped his heart. Ellen had just calmed a fussy table when she slipped into a narrow hallway near the kitchen. For a moment, alone, her mask slipped, her hands trembled, and she brushed tears from her cheeks. David's meal arrived, delivered by a curt server who barely acknowledged him. His gaze stayed on Ellen, who quickly steadied herself and returned to her tables with that same warm smile. Now, though, he saw the signs he'd missed. The slight shake in her fingers, the deep breaths she took between orders, the way she counted her tips with careful precision, as if every cent was a lifeline. As the night unfolded, David pieced together Ellen's story through quiet observation. A customer at table 2 spilled wine on his jacket, snapping at her. Ellen apologized, offered to cover dry cleaning, and turned his scowl into a reluctant nod. When a family with a restless toddler struggled, she didn't just take their order, she fetched a small toy from the counter, coaxing a laugh from the child. "Excuse me," David called softly as she passed. Up close, her eyes betrayed a bone-deep weariness, though her smile held firm. "Is your meal all right, sir?" she asked. "Perfect," David replied gently. "I just noticed you seem to love this place. How long have you been here?" A flicker of pride crossed her face. 9 years this spring, she said. "I started after my husband died. Mr. Marshall took a chance on me when I had no experience. I was 39, starting from nothing." David's chest tightened. He vaguely recalled approving her hire, but he'd never checked in. "That must have been tough," he said. Ellen's smile softened. "It was terrifying, but this job kept me and my son afloat." He was only 8 then. "This place feels like home, even when it's hard." Before he could reply, the manager, a wiry man named Kyle, appeared, his tone sharp. "Ellen, table 11's order is wrong. Fix it." David caught the tension in her posture as she nodded and hurried off, apologizing to him with a glance. Throughout the night, David watched Kyle treat his staff like cogs in a machine. He saw him snap at a young server for a small error, dismiss Ellen's suggestion to comp a dessert for a birthday table, and prioritize cost-cutting over the warm experience David had built his brand on. The final straw came near closing. Ellen approached Kyle quietly about a scheduling issue, her voice respectful. Kyle's reply was loud enough to turn heads. If you can't handle the shifts, find another job. Plenty of people would kill for yours. If this moment resonates with you, share your thoughts below. Ellen's cheeks flushed, but she nodded and walked away, retreating to the hallway where her tears returned. David couldn't stay silent. Something was broken in the place he'd built, deeper than bad service. He waited until Ellen re-emerged, then waved her over. Can we talk for a moment? I'm not complaining, I promise. She hesitated, glancing at Kyle, who was tallying the register. We're closing soon, sir, and I have tables to clear, she said. Just a minute, David urged. I run a business myself, and I think you could teach me something. Her eyes softened, and she sat, her hands clasped tightly. Up close, David saw the worn patches on her uniform, the calluses on her palms, the exhaustion etched into her face. You mentioned a son, David said gently. He must be a teenager now. Ellen's expression brightened. He's 17, wants to be an engineer. He's my world. Then her face fell. But college costs a lot, and with my hours cut, she trailed off, embarrassed. Cut hours? David pressed, though he suspected the answer. Ellen glanced around, then whispered, it's the new, efficiency, plan. Fewer full-timers to save on benefits. I used to get 38 hours, now I'm lucky for 22. They hired 4 part-timers to replace 2 of us. David's anger simmered, but he kept his tone even. That sounds grueling. Ellen's voice wavered. I love this job, making people feel at home, sharing their happy moments. But I don't know how long I can keep going. My son's college applications are due soon, and I promised I'd help. David watched this woman, who'd given nearly a decade to his restaurant, who treated every guest like family, quietly holding everything together while management eroded the culture he'd envisioned. Have you ever raised this with the owner? He asked cautiously. Ellen gave a small, wry laugh. Mr. Marshall, I've never met him. Kyle says he's too busy with his empire to care about us. What would he know about scraping by on a server's wage? The words struck David like a blow. This loyal woman thought he was indifferent to her existence. Have you faced something like this? Share in the comments. Kyle appeared, glaring. Ellen, stop chatting and finish your side work. We're not paying you to socialize. David felt a surge, like a long dormant fire igniting. He stood, his presence commanding, making Kyle step back. I'd like to hear more about this efficiency plan, David said, his voice calm but firm. Kyle frowned. Sir, we're closed. Pay your bill and, my name is David Marshall, David cut in, and I own this restaurant. The room went still. Ellen gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Nearby staff froze, staring. Mr. Marshall, Kyle stammered, his bravado crumbling. I didn't know you'd be here. That's the point, David said, his eyes locked on Kyle. I saw how you really run my place, how you treat the people who are its soul. He turned to Ellen, whose tears had returned. 9 years ago, I hired a woman who needed a chance. You came in, nervous but determined, promising to give your all. Ellen nodded, whispering, I've tried every day. I know, David said softly. But I failed you. I promised a family here, not a place where you'd feel unseen. Facing Kyle, he continued, cutting hours to dodge benefits, treating loyal staff like they're expendable, that's not my vision. He pulled out his phone. Margaret, it's David. Process a termination for Kyle at Marshall's Bistro, effective now. Start a management transition plan. Kyle's face fell as David sat back with Ellen. Tell me, honestly, what would you change here? Ellen hesitated, then spoke, not just of schedules, but of the heart of hospitality fading in the restaurant. If this story's touching you, subscribe for more like it. 3 months later, David stood in the same dining room, now alive with genuine warmth. Ellen approached, her new assistant manager, name tag gleaming, her smile no longer strained. The new staff training is thriving, she said, her voice vibrant. Retention's up 55%, and customer reviews are the best in years. David smiled, but his true joy came from seeing Ellen's son, Liam, working weekends as a busboy, learning the same care his mother showed. Liam was saving for engineering school, but more importantly, he was learning to treat every guest with dignity. The scholarship fund? David asked, though he knew the details. Ellen beamed. We've helped 4 employees' kids with tuition. Customers love that we care about our people, it brings them back. She paused. Liam's full scholarship changed our lives. Now I can help others, too. David recalled setting up that fund with one call, Ellen's grateful tears worth more than any profit margin. As the dinner rush began, David watched the staff work in harmony, guided by respect, not fear. Ellen mentored new hires, teaching them that hospitality meant seeing the humanity in every guest. "You know," she said later, "I thought success was just surviving each shift. But you showed me it's lifting everyone up." David's throat tightened. "You reminded me, Ellen, that numbers mean nothing without the connections that make this work worthwhile." As he left, the bistro's warm light spilled onto the street. Inside, Ellen trained a new server, explaining that great service wasn't about speed, it was about treating every guest like someone's loved one, worthy of kindness. Sometimes, the greatest change comes from seeing the humanity in those around us. If this story moved you, give it a like, share your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining Ellen and David on this journey to rediscover what truly matters in business and life.